there's been a death in the family. That is a phrase you might have heard at one point in your life. It is a phrase that not only informs the listener of the death of someone close to the speaker themselves, like, I lost my father, I lost my mother, I lost my son, but more so evokes a sense of shared bereavement, a loss that belongs not just to one. A Death in the Family is a comic known for depicting the death of Jason Todd, the second Robin, and not much more than that. Many people remember this unforgettable image that, at least for a time, cemented the potential permanence of comic book deaths. I'm here to tell you that A Death in the Family is so much more, so much further reaching, so consequential. This is the story that gave you the Batman you probably see in your head today. This comic, I believe, is the making of the Batman. This is what happens when he experiences a death in the family.
His father murdered by Two-Face, his mother succumbing to illness.
I might even become like a father to you.
I already have a father.
When you think of Batman, what do you see? What image does the man's name evoke? Many people see a lone figure cloaked in darkness, mired by the deaths of the two people he loved most in the world, unable to let go, unable to be happy, wholly and completely dedicated to his mission, his promise. This is a popular view on the man, but it hasn't always been that way. At one point in time, Batman was rarely seen lest he was surrounded by people, allies, friends, family. The lone detective makes for excellent comics, but I believe it is fair to say that in those comics, Gotham is the main character. That or one of the rogues. Batman is the avatar through which we see the main character. A Death in the Family is perhaps the most famous comic that depicts Batman's relationship with those in his orbit. Not that there haven't been many before and since, but this is a work that depicts a defining event in Bruce Wayne's life. I would argue that aside from the deaths of his parents, his most defining moment, it depicts Batman as a father. We begin the comic with Batman and Robin taking down a ring of child pornographers, and while there is little sympathy to be had for these men, Batman has to maintain a good relationship with the police in order to do what he does unencumbered. Jason does not take this into consideration and unleashes a vicious beating upon them quite gleefully. Although, despite Jason's potential damage to the duo's relationships with the police, that is not what Batman is concerned about first and foremost. In later, harsher versions of the character, that is often his primary concern. But here we have a man who is not always focused on the mission. Bruce's primary concern isn't for the job, it's for Jason's mental state. We see this in a conversation with Alfred, where Bruce questions his choice as a guardian and makes the decision to remove Jason from active duty. Undoubtedly the responsible decision, but as Bruce is wont to do, he doesn't go about the delivery of the news very well. I feel it's fair to assume that he learned lessons from how he handled Dick Grayson's teenage years and the dent that handling put in their relationship. But he still does not know how to tackle the situation tactfully, or really how to give Jason what he needs. Yet that is his concern. Sadly, the best way he seems to be able to communicate with Jason is as Batman, not Bruce.
You shattered his collarbone!
He's a drug-dealing pimp.
You know how dangerous...
I know that he shot Barbara through the spine. But you only put that waste of life back in his cell.
One thing that is established in the comic is Jason and Bruce's different approaches to justice. Much can be revealed about the holes in Bruce's ideology through the character of Jason, not only with the no-killing rule, but with a completely different outlook on life. Bruce may have lost his parents in the alley, and in a sense, he was reborn there. But he will never know what it is like to be a true child of the alley. Someone who wakes up every day not knowing where their next meal will come from, whether they will have shelter tomorrow, or whether they will be exploited or even killed in various ways. Growing up this way will have shaped Jason's perception of the world and given him a far less idealistic look at the world than the man who, aside from the one awful life-changing night, has never unwillingly experienced a lack of safety or insecurity, financial or otherwise. It stands to reason that Bruce believes these things can be fixed because he has lived in a world where very little cannot be, whereas Jason will see many things as unfixable. Jason is exactly the kind of child Bruce is trying to save with his efforts as Batman. Jason shows this failure both on a personal level and an ideological level. This is focused on more in Under the Red Hood, and A Death in the Family seems to be mostly taking Batman's side in this, considering how, I believe, unfairly disliked Jason was in his original appearances. But looking back on this with a more critical eye, we can see exactly how much Jason reveals about Bruce's short-sightedness.
Do you remember how he was when I found him?
Of course. Fearless, arrogant, brash, and gifted.
Yes, different than Dick in so many ways.
Another thing A Death in the Family teaches us about Batman is how he constructs his perspective of his own history and mistakes, and I believe, as a result, his comic books do too. The prevailing narrative about Jason's death is that this was due to arrogance and disobedience, something he was well known for in the comics and well disliked for. That is not entirely true, and I believe it is wildly unfair. Disobedience played a part, yes, but the real story is Jason trying to find a sense of belonging that he wasn't able to find with Bruce in searching for his mother. He does find her, but they also happen to be on the trail of the Joker, who is selling uranium to terrorists. Unbeknownst to Jason, his mother is involved in this. So when Batman leaves to track the terrorists and the young lad sees the Joker hanging around his mother, he does what any hero, any noble young man would do, and goes in to save her. He's not even particularly rash about it. He makes the decision to reveal his Robin identity because he believes that will mean she is more likely to listen to him rather than if he was just a normal kid who didn't know what he was doing. Of course, this just gives her a bargaining chip to hand over to the Joker. Batman, perhaps partially due to not having seen this, but also due to his own warped view of his own failings and Jason's core problems, seems to have created the narrative in his head that it was Jason's failings as Robin that led him to do this, whereas the opposite is true. It was his successes as Robin, his heroism, his kindness, his quick thinking to resolve the situation as quickly as possible for the person he believed to be in danger. There may be many reasons for this, but my belief is that it is so much easier to take upon oneself that your child died due to what you failed to teach them, rather than having them die due to all the good lessons you succeeded in bequeathing them.
Please remember how distraught you were. Even I found it hard.
You always wanted Jason gone, so you abandoned him.
We all know the image of Batman as the stoic man devoted to his cause, never eager to get close to anyone. This was not always the case. While Bruce has always been dedicated to his cause and wary of others, his willingness to make friends and expand his family was much greater before experiencing the worst thing a person can experience, being forced to bury one's child. Not only that, but having to deal with the fact that he brought him into the world that killed him. He exposed him to the man that killed him. So those that espouse the very real merits of a lone Batman fail to take into consideration that it was his previous willingness to open himself up to friends and family that pushed him into that. But this is a death in the family. As we said, this is not just simply a personal loss for one man. It reaches out beyond that. Bruce's relationship with Dick Grayson, his first Robin, was always a little contentious as the boy grew older and started demanding more independence. Jason's presence did not help matters, as Bruce had given the boy something that arguably wasn't his to give away. This not only drove a greater wedge between Bruce and Dick, but also put a barrier to there being any kind of relationship between Jason and his predecessor, something which may have helped the boy feel not so alone. To have someone that understood Bruce and understood the struggle of being Robin. However, despite the minimal contact between the two Robins, Dick is not left unscarred by Jason's death. As a matter of fact, it seems to be that very distance that caused Dick so much grief, and upon his confronting of Bruce, we get more of them pulling away from each other. We get more of the lone, stoic, unyielding man who refuses to allow himself to be happy, refuses to allow himself anyone, lest he lose them. The guilt felt by both these men looks set to divide them forever, until a bright spark enters once again. Tim Drake, though not part of the family yet, is also affected by Jason's death. Additionally, he sees how merciless and violent Batman is without a Robin. He begs Dick to come back, but not only has the young man moved on with his life, he is likely not the right person to help Bruce at this time in his life. So Tim takes up the mantle to fill the vital role that Jason left behind. It is this that allows healing to set in, both for Bruce himself and for the family. But Batman is left forever changed. He is not as open, not as willing to give others the benefit of the doubt, even his friends and allies. He is not the man he once was, nor will he ever be again.
Now, how many dead eyes can you look into before you die inside yourself?
I've been dead inside a long time. But even I have a limit. And make no mistake, I will fucking kill you.
As we established, A Death in the Family is known for the death of Jason Todd and not much more than that. However, that is only 3/4 of the comic. After Jason's death, we deal with Batman's most contentious issue. Many who have an investment in this relationship and know where it ends up forget that Bruce fully intended to kill the Joker. After everything he did, everyone who suffered due to his refusal to take every opportunity to change, even after paralyzing Barbara Gordon, Bruce remains steadfast. But then the Joker took his son. It was enough for him. But Bruce's hands are otherwise tied by international law. The Joker's sudden appointment as the UN ambassador to Iran complicates things dramatically. Diplomatic immunity shields the Joker from punishment, leaving Bruce bound by the rules of international law. Killing the Joker would spark an international incident, forcing Batman to abide by a system that the Joker has exploited to escape justice. This injustice highlights the frustrating reality that even the most depraved criminals can manipulate the legal and political system to evade consequences, while heroes driven by their moral code are left powerless to act. It raises questions about the fairness of a world where following society's rules sometimes allows evil to flourish unchecked, creating a moral grey area for those who seek true justice. Despite this, despite the overwhelming consequences, Bruce is still contemplating killing the monstrous man. The pain of losing Jason's so great that even the stability of the world isn't enough to immediately change his mind. This is where Superman comes in. He urges Bruce to not do something he will regret when his head is cleared of the fog of grief. He could easily stop Bruce by force, but such is his faith in the man that he leaves the ultimate decision up to him. But we do not get a resolution. It is unresolved. What would he have done? We'll likely never know.
So this is not your doing. You loved him. He knows that. It should be enough.
It's not.
So what does A Death in the Family teach us about Batman? It shows us that he was not always the way we sometimes remember him. It shows us that what happens to him affects everyone in his orbit. It shows us that he is an unreliable narrator who will shape his own history to meet his ideology. It shows us that maybe, just maybe, when not in his logical state of mind, there are things Bruce will kill for, but that question is best left unresolved. It asks the question, what would you do if you lost a child? What would you do if their killer went free? How would you then go on with your life? And what would you do if they came back? But that's another story.